Morning, everyone. Happy Friday. It is Friday. I hope you had a great week. We are in the last, we got out of Mercury retrograde on the 3rd, but hold your horses. Mercury is still in its shadow period until February 23rd, and sometimes the last, I gotta put my microphone on. Sorry, guys. Essentially today is we're getting out of Mercury retrograde. The last day of Mercury retrograde was the 3rd of February, and it will be in its shadow period until the 23rd. So we're still a little bit slow, but we're getting faster and faster and faster. Mercury's getting faster and faster and faster. Good morning, Fran Marie. Nice to see you. How have I been? Hi, Diane. I've been great. It's been a very good week, especially considering it's the last week of Mercury retrograde. Good morning, John. Nice to see you. Good morning, Jamie. So we are in the last, Mercury is direct, but it always takes a little bit for it to get going. So just keep that in mind. We're going to be in the clear the 23rd of February, where Mercury will be out of its shadow period and things will be even better, but you should start feeling things better, I would say, this weekend. And we're going to talk about what's going on in the stars. So this past Monday or Tuesday if you're on the East Coast. Good morning, Maggie. Nice to see you. We had a new moon in Aquarius. All new moons like this one, it starts a 28-day cycle. New moons bring an invigorating burst of energy and initiative, making it a great time for a fresh start. Good morning, Carrie McKim. Nice to see you. So we had this new moon this past week, Monday, Tuesday. So it's all about a new beginning. And this new moon actually made a square to Uranus, which is Aquarius's ruling planet. So there's a tension that exists with squares, but they lead to new opportunities. Squares get shit done. So this is a turning point, this new moon. So you'll probably see some really great changes between now and March 2nd, which is when we have our next new moon. And it's going to be a big deal, that new moon in Pisces on March 2nd, because all planets will be direct and out of their shadow period. So it's definitely a time in which things will be moving ahead more readily. This past new moon on Monday also was really, really harmonious, with a trine between Venus and Uranus. And that brings harmonious change and excitement to love, finances, and creative outlets. So a lot of really great aspects this past Monday. And with Mercury going direct and Venus now direct, and Venus will actually be out of its shadow March 1st, but it is direct as well. So we do have technically Venus and Mercury direct, but Mercury will be out of its shadow period February 23rd, and Venus will be out of its shadow period come March 1st. So this is a big deal, this new moon. It's definitely a time in which things are changing, and they're very harmonious changes. So I hope you enjoy it and you're going with the flow. Maybe you saw some aliens. Did anybody see any aliens on this new moon in Aquarius? Probably not. I didn't, but it's a very alien moon. The Aquarius energy is really hooked up to space, things that are really far out and out there. So who knows? You might find yourself getting flashes of insight, either from the aliens or divine intelligence. But definitely, this is a time to really break free and out of any ruts. Good morning, Sin Bagley. Nice to see you. So we had that new moon. Oh, am I an alien? I might be. I could be. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. But maybe. I don't know. The verdict's still out. But today would be Rosa Parks' birthday. So make sure that you don't put up with any nonsense in honor of Rosa. You see an alien every day in the mirror. That's good. Yeah. So, of course, we're under the waxing moon phase, right? So that's all about drawing new things into our lives over the next 2 weeks, especially, or next week, I should say, week and a half, with this waxing moon energy. It is Venus's day today, Friday. Every Friday is. So be sure to spread the love. Give as much love to yourself and your world and your friends and your family as possible. It's Venus's day. Good afternoon, Silver Gray. Nice to see you. In addition to it being Venus's day, we left the watery, magical realms of Pisces, and the moon has entered Aries at this point. If you were in my locals event this past Monday, we spoke about how to create a new moon wish list. Part of creating a new moon wish list and making your wishes come true is your first house or your identity or your self construct. So essentially, what we spoke about is whatever it is that you want, you need to create a self construct or a self image that lends itself to what it is that you want. So you need to align your identity with what it is that you have. And that is really apropos to the Aries moon today, because the Aries moon is about self assertion. The key phrase is I am for Aries. So you want to create a self construct or an identity that is aligned with what it is that you want, i.e., if you want to be in a wonderful relationship, you have to self identify as somebody who loves freely and is a really great person to be in a relationship, is good in relationships. If you want to manifest a lot of money, you have to identify as somebody who makes money easily, stuff like that. So keep that in mind. Oh, that is a very good point. If only everybody could be brave like Rosa. Yes, it's very possible we can be, especially today under the Aries moon. Aries keywords and phrases include courage, self-focus, confidence, initiative, first, enthusiasm, passionate, competitive, direct, and active. So utilize this Aries moon today to assert yourself anew, especially in light of your new moon goals when the moon was in Aquarius. Yeah. Additionally, today, folks, we have two big aspects that we're going to talk about. One is Mars's sextile to Jupiter, which one of my old favorites, Phil Donahue, has in his chart. He's great. Oh, what's this, Sin? Dang, I've been having to talk to people. Self-assertion wasn't helping. No wonder I was being a worry this morning. Yeah. With the Aries moon, we're definitely inclined to not let anybody step on our blue suede shoes, which is probably a good thing. But with this aspect, it's very positive actually today. You might want to expect increased optimism, strong instincts, initiative, and a more daring attitude with Mars's sextile to Jupiter. This aspect today is also an ideal time to tackle any difficult tasks, as there's an excellent chance of success. A strong competitive streak and amplified attractiveness make this a great time for sports, games, and sex. How perfect under an Aries moon as well, which is also good for sports, games, and sex. It's a rather high energy transit as well, suited to playing and working hard, and is one of the best transits for dating and romance. So if any of you have date night tonight, it's Friday, well, this is a good aspect for it. However, the sun will also conjunct Saturn today. So the sun is about life and vitality and strength and consciousness. It's the masculine principle, and it's conjunct Saturn, the planet of restriction, responsibility, and discipline. And also Saturn cuts things off. So it's interesting that John Wayne Bobbitt has this aspect in his chart, the sun being the masculine principle and Saturn cutting things off. It's a little bit on the nose. Pardon the pun. Oh, you did? You like the new moon? I'm glad you did, Fran. I'm glad you were there. I hope it's very good for you, very fruitful. Oh, what's this, Silver Gray? Your brother is an Aries, but he's mellow. Ditto for me, even though I'm a Leo. Go figure. You may be water-oriented. That is true. That could be the case. That could be the case. Oh, and yes, you have a lot of water as well. Well, we're going to look at John Wayne's John Wayne Bobbitt's chart today, a little bit there, and we're going to notice a lot of water in his chart, which is a big surprise to me, actually. But we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, the Sun conjunct Saturn is an aspect today for all of us. So it's a great day to actually take on extra responsibility or to act as a mentor or guide. Oh, you are, Maggie? I like that. One of my friends actually has that. Yeah, it's very interesting combination because it's you're assertive and self-focused, but also very compassionate and otherworldly. Typically, at least my friend is, who has this in his chart. Additionally, it's often more difficult with this aspect to express ourselves. So you want to give extra consideration in your relationships today, especially because the moon is in Aries. And Aries is a little bit self-focused. It is the baby of the zodiac. So we can sometimes be a little bit too focused on ourselves when the moon is in Aries, and we have to give a little bit of extra consideration for other people. And that's even further emphasized with the Sun's conjunct to Saturn, which can make us a little cool. It's also a good thing with the Sun's conjunct to Saturn to tend to the structures in your life. They may need attention. So this could be literally the structure of your home. Maybe your home could use a little bit of restructuring, or it's your daily routine. Maybe it's metaphorical, and you need to structure time to achieve your new moon goals. Maybe you got to create a new daily routine, a new structure in your life. But today's a great day to consider that. It's a great day for a fresh start and being responsible. And remember, the Sun is still in Aquarius, so freedom is responsibility. When we tend to our responsibilities, we can then be free. And tomorrow, folks, is National Eat Ice Cream for Breakfast Day, which should be awesome. I myself am going to have an ice cream sandwich. I think that might be a little bit more healthy than just a big bowl of Ben and Jerry's. So I'm going to have an ice cream sandwich, and I hope you guys have ice cream for breakfast tomorrow too, if that's healthy for you. If you're, well, it's not healthy really for anyone, but if you can do it, I would do it. I mean, how often do we get to have ice cream for breakfast? Good morning, Stone Enchantress. Yeah, ice cream for breakfast. National Eat Ice Cream for Breakfast Day tomorrow, Stone Enchantress. So make sure you get some ice cream today for tomorrow morning. It will be Saturn's day on Saturday. Every Saturday is. So it is about structuring your life and discipline and responsibility. So maybe after you eat your ice cream, you work out or you eat clean for the rest of the day. And the moon will be in Aries. So again, it's a really great day for a fresh start. Ice cream on a croissant? I've never heard of such a thing. That sounds interesting. Yeah, well, I understand, friend. That's okay. We don't want you to have an upset stomach. So don't engage in National Eat Ice Cream for Breakfast Day if it's going to give you an upset tummy. That would be terrible. The moon will be in Aries, so it's good for a fresh start tomorrow. It's good for starting something new, physical activity, fun play, keeping things simple, and activities that require big, short bursts of energy, which really is Aries, very Aries. Aries have two speeds, burn and off. So it's probably better to get things done in a big burst of energy tomorrow as opposed to a project that's going to take you forever or a long time. You are in France. I know. I think it's so exciting that you're watching me from France. It's very, very humbling to know that I have somebody international with me this morning. So thank you for joining me, France. Oh, a root beer float. I used to love those. I used to love root beer floats. I love what it does to the vanilla ice cream. It makes it sort of like icy from what I remember it. Marlo in the making. Happy Friday. Happy Friday to you. So yeah, this will be a nice Aries moon for you tomorrow. International. Is it national or international? I don't know, but you can still have, even if you're in France, ice cream for breakfast tomorrow, so long as it doesn't upset your tummy like it does France. So yeah. Additionally, on Sunday, we have Babe Ruth's birthday. Yeah, so celebrate Babe Ruth, maybe play some baseball. We also have the waxing moon still, of course, in effect. So it's about drawing new things into our lives. And it's the Sun's day. So be sure to celebrate being alive, have fun, do whatever it is that you can to express yourself and have fun. We will have an Aries moon most of the day on Sunday, and the moon will enter Taurus come 5:52 p.m. EST. And the Taurus moon, essentially you start something under the Aries moon, and under the Taurus moon, you nurture it, you care for it, you guide it, you stabilize it, you ground it. So the Taurus moon is great for activities that yield solid results, financial matters, nesting and resting, which is great because it's a Sunday, perfect day to nest and rest. It's great for enjoying your body. The Taurus moon, Tauruses are very sensual and they love music. Tauruses are incredibly music. So many Tauruses are great musical artists. Janet Jackson, Billy Joel, Jack Johnson. Who else is there? Stevie Wonder. So many. Enjoy your Taurus moon on Sunday. And let's talk about Farrah Fawcett, whose birthday was this week. I'm going to give a quick gander at her chart. I think it's really fascinating. When we look at Farrah Fawcett's chart, she was quite an amazing little actress. I saw for the first time the other day, don't ask me why, but Extremities. Did anybody see Extremities? That movie Extremities? So ridiculous. But it was a good movie. My favorite thing with Farrah was actually a movie called Small Sacrifices, which was I think it was in, I want to say 1989, but I'm not quite sure. But essentially, I'm a true crime buff, or I go through phases with true crime. And Farrah actually played this murderess by the name of Diane Downs, who was obsessed with this guy and shot her 3 kids because she was under the impression that he didn't want her because she had 3 children. So she wanted to get them out, the children out of the way, and he would be in love with her. Well, certainly didn't work out to her, for her. It didn't work. Yes, she was on Charlie's Angels as well. Farrah Fawcett played Diane Downs, the murderess, and she's really good in that. Really good. Too good. Her chart, and she was on Charlie's Angels. Absolutely. Yeah, she absolutely was. That was her big claim to fame. Wasn't it chilling? I'm glad you saw it too, and I'm not the only one. She was so good in that role. Anyway, when we look at her chart, what's interesting is that, Aquarians are pretty cool. They're really detached and they're not really emotional by any stretch of the imagination. But Farrah, well, she certainly was, according to her chart anyway. We do have her time of birth, so this is a correct chart, which is nice. So we notice that she has a Cancerian rising. Cancer being her rising sign. The moon is the ruler of her chart, and the moon is in Cancer too. So we're talking about a very moody individual, or certainly somebody who has a lot of emotionality. So that moon at 4 degrees is sort of the boss of this chart. And there is a Chiron connection with that moon. So Chiron is at 8 degrees Scorpio and makes a beautiful trine with that 4-degree Cancer moon, as well as her ascendant at 5 degrees. So there's a flow of energy between her woundedness, her subconscious, which is her moon, as well as the 12th house, and also how she expresses herself. So she expresses her woundedness very, very easily, which makes sense because a lot of her characters are in pain. And I think that in the case of Diane Downs, that movie that she did, well, Diane Downs was obviously in a lot of pain there, but there was a lot of layers before that, so she wasn't really in touch with her pain. In fact, a case could be made that Diane Downs, the character that Farrah played, had so much pain that it was almost a matter of disassociation between her reality and how she was living her life, which I do think makes sense because I believe Diane Downs does have Aquarius strong in her chart, even though she was a Leo. Interesting. I mean, you're not going to kill your children on account of a guy unless you're completely screwed up, right? There's obviously a lot of woundedness there. So it's a woundedness, but it's not necessarily conscious. So yeah, she's very subconsciously motivated, Farrah Fawcett. And yeah, Farrah is a great name, isn't it? It's a really great name. Yeah, so additionally with this chart, there's a lot of really interesting things. One thing is, even though she does have that strong water, she is an Aquarius, and she also has a grand air trine in her chart. If you notice here, she has her sun in Aquarius, and that's making a nice trine to her Uranus in Gemini, as well as her North Node in Gemini, and also her Neptune in Libra at 10 degrees. So that's a grand air trine. So whenever you have a trine in a chart, the intellectual energy, well, if it's an air trine, the intellectual energy is really, really free and can be really focused. So she has a lot of gifts that are mental or intellectual, and she's able to put a lot of mental energy to things with ease. And that obviously can help in terms of her acting, especially with that emotionality with that moon and Cancerian rising. So pretty interesting chart. What is this? Yeah, histrionic personality disorder. She also was labeled as a narcissist. And this was back when narcissistic personality disorder wasn't thrown around like it is every 5 seconds. Yeah, she has a whole bunch of stuff. I did actually, maybe I'll do another one. I think for Halloween, I did a ghost story involving her trial. I don't know why it was a ghost story. I think I was just trying to be, have something be a little haunting, and that is a haunting story, but maybe I'll do something with that. Additionally, Farrah Fawcett has a lot of other interesting aspects. Her sun is opposing Pluto, which is pretty intense. So her life, her vitality, her power, sun is opposed by Pluto, a force that is greater than herself. So this could be reminiscent of problematic relationships. I'm really not sure of the history of her relationships, but I'm sure that they were tumultuous with the sun being opposed by Pluto. There's definitely a sense of her vitality up against forces that are greater than herself, with that opposition, which is pretty interesting. The Neptune sextiles Pluto in this chart as well, which is pretty intense. So yeah, that Pluto at 12 degrees Leo makes a harmonious sextile to Neptune. So there's power with Pluto, and with Neptune we have otherworldliness, which makes her a really, really great actress. Other things that are interesting here, her Mars in her chart at 6 degrees Aquarius is also opposed by Saturn. So this is an interesting thing that we'll actually talk about when we're talking about the Bobbits, because this was an aspect that on that fateful night. But Mars here opposes Saturn, so it really creates a certain amount of tension, as if something has got to give. Because Mars is like go, 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 and Saturn says no, no, no. So it creates a certain amount of attention. Definitely interesting. Mercury in this chart too, at 20 degrees Aquarius, makes a really nice trine to her Uranus at 17 degrees Gemini. So there's a nice flow of energy with that Mercury hitting Uranus, and essentially Mercury is about communication. Uranus is about surprise and waking people up. And through her communication style, she's able to really infuse her communications with anything that catalyzes. So she's able to communicate in such a way that really wakes people up. She also has her sun at 13 degrees Aquarius, making a really nice trine to Neptune, which makes her really good on camera, which she was. She's a beautiful girl and a really great actress. Oh, thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Maggie Cole. Histrionic. So histrionic disorder is really interesting. Usually they're over the top. A lot of times with histrionic disorder, it's kind of one of the funnier disorders. They become like overtly sexual. They will like flirt with people in a very, very weird way. They can be very childlike, etc. Otherwise, let's take a little bit of a look. It's been a while since I studied histrionic disorder, but I think it might be interesting to talk about histrionic disorder. I know that's one of the traits, that they can be a little bit, a little bit crazy, a lot crazy. So it's a person. Okay, so here we go. A person with histrionic personality disorder seeks attention, talks dramatically with strong opinions, is easily influenced, has rapidly changing emotions, and thinks relationships are closer than they are. So with Diane Downs, just to go back to that, she thought that her relationship with this other guy was so intense that he would leave her. I think maybe the narcissism was her believing that it wasn't her, that it was really her children that was in the way of her relationship. Interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, overwhelmed. Oh, I like this. Thank you, Diane. To be noticed and often behave dramatically or inappropriately to get attention. Yeah, it can be rather sexy in a very weird way. Like, why are you doing that? So, oh, your real name is Elvis. Your mom loved the king? That's super cool. Yeah, so this was oh, and that is so fascinating. Peggy Lee was great. That's pretty cool. So yeah, this was Farah's chart. It's pretty interesting. Let's see here. Can someone have both histrionic disorder coupled with Stockholm syndrome? Oh, I'm sure of it. Why not? Yeah, really interesting. But that's Farah's chart. She was wonderful, wonderful person and actress. And this guy, oh boy, we have a few things to talk about with him. And it's good that we're talking about John Wayne Bobbitt, because not only is the sun conjuncting Saturn today, which he had in his chart, but the moon is in Aries, and he is in Aries. I mean, really, leave it to an Aries to have his member cut off, put back on, and then proceeding to make porn, which is what he did, which, I mean, that's no mean feat, I gotta say. So, yeah, this was him. I think, Jamie, I think in terms of Diane Downs, she probably had borderline personality disorder too. So, yeah, we remember this story, don't we? This was in 1993. And, three sides to every story, what he says, what she says, what really happened. But essentially, one night, Lorena over here, she went into the kitchen. And while her husband was sleeping, unfortunately for him, he wasn't sleeping on his stomach. She went into the kitchen, returned to the bedroom, and cut off his member. Let's just say that, make it PG-13. They cut off his member, and then apparently she got into her car, drove away, and she was so hysterical, she didn't even realize that she was still holding it in her hand. So she screamed when she noticed that she was still holding his member in her hand, opened the window on the snowy night, and luckily it was snowing. She tossed the member out into the window. It was in the snow. John Wayne Bobbitt then proceeded to call his friend, who must have been, traumatized probably still to this day. And John Wayne Bobbitt thought he was going to die because blood was going everywhere, obviously. And miraculously, he called the hospital, and they were like, okay, we need your member. We need it. And luckily, it was thrown out the window, and the snow was able to preserve it in such a way. And they put his member in they fetched his member. They put it in I think it was a brown bag from some like fast food place, and they got him to the hospital and had surgery. And yeah. So essentially the whole story is that, she was able to actually not get convicted for this. So she got an extremely light sentence because she essentially said that he had abused her. He was raping her all the time. He was treating her terribly. And oh, yeah, no, I really am. This is very much so. She got off on it. The trial, the charges, I believe, because she proved somehow to a jury that that he deserved it, that he was torturing her. He was a bastard, which I believe, absolutely. Sun conjunct Saturn, Aries. Oh, I'm sure he was a bastard. Absolutely. But anyway, let's look and see what's up with this chart. I got to say, I was extremely surprised when I watched this, looked at this chart. Really surprised, because smack dab in the middle of it is a trine, and I was thinking this guy because he's a military guy, and I think he was I think he was quite an abuser. I think that's pretty clear. Not to say that again, three sides to every story. We're going to talk a little bit about Lorena's chart, but he has a grand water trine. This trine is in water. Trine is in water. So it's that Chiron in Pisces at 26, with his Jupiter at 24 degrees Cancer, and then his Neptune at 24 degrees Scorpio. So grand water trine in his chart. So this guy had a surplus of water energy, which might explain why he drank so much. I mean, that's one way you can express all of that water energy, sort of like drowning. But also you might want to look at how that water trine, all of that water just naturally conflicts with that fire, right? It's like a feeling of like, oh, my fire is being put out. I need to get my fire back on. So it creates like that inner conflict. But yeah, I think it's really interesting as that grand water trine. Jeez. Be interesting to see how he continues to express it. He's still around. So other stuff, of course, he has the sun in Aries, right? And it is conjunct Saturn. So again, that's interesting. I mean, the sun conjuncting Saturn is really, really tough. It makes self-expression very, very, very difficult. And it also, again, Saturn cuts things off. So there may have been a cutting off of, his father in his life, or his father may have been extremely strict, keeping that sun from really shining because Saturn restricts things. And it also could harken back to his military background. Very interesting. And that sun in Aries at 2 degrees does make an awkward quincunx to Mars, which is probably why he had to make adjustments in terms of, or should have made adjustments in terms of his assertion, how he could have been probably a bully in some respects. So yeah, very interesting chart here. Oh yes, exactly. Yeah, there's it's very steamy. Very steamy. Yeah, a cutting off. So yeah, that's what's interesting, Linda. The sun conjunct Saturn. Saturn cuts things, and the sun is about the masculine principle, right? So it's really interesting that he has this aspect in his chart, because that really is a little bit on the nose. So yeah, it's true. There's a lot of jokes that could be made. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean it's literal, right? The sun conjuncting Saturn. So yeah, other interesting things with this chart. He does have Pluto and Uranus conjunct in Virgo, which Virgo pertains to the body, and Pluto is emotional trauma, and Uranus is mental trauma, and the two were together. So it's interesting how that featured in his chart. I don't think it's the first time he experienced mental and emotional trauma. It's probably a story, right? A story that had surfaced earlier in his life that was replicated. I don't think, you can just have something like that happen to you and it be like a one-off. Like it's probably a pattern. Not saying that he's had different parts of his body cut off in his life, but he probably dealt with some kind of emotional, mental trauma before, right? It's interesting. Very, very interesting. We also have Mars in his chart opposing his Venus, making an opposition to his Venus. So that really makes it very, very difficult in a lot of respects for him to get those Venetian needs met, because he's feeling as if he's always up against something. And essentially there's a difficulty in getting those two energies to coexist harmoniously, which really makes sense in terms of his marriage in which he was fighting. And really, in a lot of respects, they're saying that, and again, we don't know these things, right? But they say even after he was with Lorena, he was with other girlfriends who accused him of being abusive. and doing a lot of other things too. Not nice. Yeah, in his fourth house. So the fourth house does have to do with home and family, and his moon is in Leo, which certainly doesn't help his bravado, especially with that Gemini rising. I think Gemini rising with the moon at 26, that's really tough because Gemini can have a mouth, right? Air sign. It can communicate quite a bit. And I think with Mercury being the ruler of a chart, it's an emotional communication. And with that with that moon in Leo, it can make him rather mouthy and even dramatic in some respects. Yeah, So Saturn does cut things. Yep, it cuts things off. It also creates definition. So it just doesn't only cut things off. It also creates structures and definitions. So that's really interesting. But yeah, I think it's interesting he has that grand water trine in his chart. It also is interesting that he has a packed 11th house, which has to do with love of the masses and a certain degree of fame. And that really is his destiny. His destiny with the North Node in Taurus is to be a voice, for the public. Interesting. And I think he, raised some interesting points in regard to his case. The night of the incident, I just wanted to look at this really quickly to just show you what was going on that night. So what's really interesting is the night of the incident, June 23rd, 1993, Mars was opposing Saturn. So that's really interesting. That is a really tough aspect because Mars wants us to go and Saturn says stop. So there's a tremendous amount of tension that night, which makes a lot of sense. Meanwhile, the sun was at 2 degrees Cancer that night and was making a square to Jupiter at 5 degrees Libra. So again, with that, there's almost a sense of how do I adjust or make allowances so these two planets can get along. Squares create a certain amount of tension that makes things happen. And really, there's that feeling of really going really, really small, or really going really, really big, with Jupiter being involved here. So there's that instinct to sort of cower, but also to get really, really big. And of course, with that comes a tremendous amount of tension. Interesting night that was, definitely. So let's see here. Additionally, that night, Neptune was hitting Uranus. It was exact. So Neptune is about confusion, and Uranus is about unforeseen upsets and catastrophe and surprise and things happening that are shocking. So really, it was a night of really that alarm clock hitting that illusion with Neptune there. So it was sort of a matter of, I think with Neptune conjuncting Uranus, the illusions that we have are pretty neat and tidy. And then Uranus comes and really just makes them out of this world. So it can really bop you out of any illusions you might be with that conjunction. It can also create problems based upon not being in reality, right? With Neptune, either drinking. My feeling is with all the water in John's chart and also this these aspects this night, it's definitely ripe for drinking. Definitely ripe for drinking. So yeah, that was what was going on that night. In regard to John's chart that night, what was going on in his chart, like the transits for him that night, we noticed that Saturn was moving through his 10th house. So 10th house is about status, position, and honors. And Saturn wants definition. And it also wants us to pay up and to, get what we deserve. So it's interesting. In a lot of respects, just looking at this, I think from a spiritual perspective, like I think that especially if he was utilizing his member in a way to hurt someone, well, he got his comeuppance, didn't he? Right? With Saturn transiting that 10th house. And maybe Saturn, which cuts things off and creates definition, maybe he needed that to define himself. I mean, knowing his background, he probably wouldn't have had any kind of recognition in the world unless this happened. Like, what was he going to do that was going to put him on the world map? Nothing. He was, just wasn't ambitious at all. and didn't really have anything to show for himself with this 11th house. And then you had a situation like this that essentially catapulted him into the spotlight. And, with energy and with these charts, like it's the law of least resistance in the sense that what's the easiest way if his North Node is in the 11th house, right? And he's supposed to have a certain degree of notoriety or fame or attention, public acclaim, then the universe is going to do that in the easiest way possible. So apparently the easiest way for him to get into the world stage and to work that North Node conjunct Venus in the 11th house was to have something like this happen. So I think that gives us a great idea of the type of man he was. Like the only way you're going to, get the popularity you want is to, have your member cut off. Fascinating. Additionally, that night, Mercury was hitting his Jupiter. So Mercury is about communications, and Jupiter, whatever Jupiter touches, it makes bigger, right? So with Mercury hitting his Jupiter that night, and that week, really, chances are he was rather mouthy. He was probably really emotional, really moody, and rather mouthy. Meanwhile, Mars was just crossing over his moon, because his moon is in Leo at 26 degrees. And Mars had just gotten out of Leo that night. It was at 0 degrees Virgo. So when when Mars hits the moon, it's a really difficult energy, right? Because the moon is very, very sensitive, and the Mars is very combative, and it's just for a feeling of being cut or bullied or pushed around in the most vulnerable aspect of yourself. So typically with this aspect, it's a good time to swim because you want to do something that is action oriented, but is also somewhat emotional, and water is emotion. Otherwise, what happens with Mars conjuncting the moon, typically we want to drink, right? That's a typical thing. But swimming is much more appropriate. Meanwhile, that night, we had Pluto, which is about transformation, hitting his Neptune. I mean, it wasn't just that night. This is a longer aspect. But with Pluto on his Neptune, essentially, Pluto wants to destroy in order to create. And with Neptune, it's about destroying illusions. So maybe he was under some kind of illusion that night. And also, you had Uranus and Neptune, which we spoke about before, about Uranus conjuncting Neptune. Again, these are longer aspects, but still, it was transiting his 8th house of death, of rebirth. And of course, that night for him was very, very... it was definitely created a rebirth, which is fascinating. And then when we look at what was going on with Lorena's chart that night, it's really interesting. So Pluto, transiting Pluto, again, this is a longer aspect, so it was building, but it was really, and we don't know her time of birth, for whatever reason, we don't know her time of birth. Actually, we probably do know why we don't know her time of birth, is that she's a Scorpio, and a lot of Scorpios don't give their time of birth. They don't make it available for whatever reason. I just noticed in my experience going over charts. But yeah, we do know that Pluto was at 23 degrees Scorpio that night, and it probably was hitting her moon. And if it wasn't hitting her moon, it was certainly hitting her Venus. So think of Pluto, which is about darkness and god of the underworld and uncontrollable impulses and compulsivity. And that was hitting her Venus, which has to do with her love and her relationships. And that Venus in her chart was retrograde, or is retrograde, when she was born. So she had a lot of love lessons to learn. Meanwhile, on that fateful night in which Lorena did cut off her husband's member, Jupiter, which expands whatever it touches, was hitting her Mars. So Mars is about action, and it actually rules sharp objects, and it's about going to war, and it's about fighting. So Jupiter was hitting her Mars. So her Mars energy of essentially being that fighter was really activated that night. Meanwhile, Mars was at 0 degrees Virgo, which is exactly on her South Node. So she's coming, when Mars activates the South Node, it's a matter of the past and her past lives and really what she's supposed to move away from in her life. It was catalyzed. Meanwhile, that's not the only thing that was catalyzed that night, right? Saturn was catalyzing her North Node, saying, okay, I need to create definition in my life, or I need to cut something off, because Saturn cuts things off, right? Fascinating. Meanwhile, Venus was actually hitting her Saturn, which creates a little bit of conflict with her love nature, right? Because Saturn cuts things off and Venus is all about love. But who knows? Maybe in order for her to create more definition in her life and to actually be at one with her Venusian aspects, to, feel more womanly, she needed to take some kind of responsibility for herself. Really fascinating. And then finally, let's just look at this is Lorena's chart on its own. So yeah, we notice we don't have her time of birth, so don't mind the houses or the rising sign. We don't know that. Let me see here. Yeah, are there any cold case type TV show where a person does forensics with astrology? There's not yet. I would love to get into that maybe in some point, just because you can get some information. I'm interested in true crime, but I don't always apply the astrology to it, especially cases that are, cold, just because I think it's a whole other science that I would have to study a lot more of in order to understand. Yep, Scorpio stellium she had. No surprise there. Oh, did it happen near you? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, this is her chart. It's her chart. So, yeah, she has a Scorpio stellium. We know that she at least has 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, no, I mean 5. Well, I think she has her moon in Scorpio. Either it's that or Sagittarius. She was born later in the day that day. And she's a Halloween baby, actually. We also notice in her chart she has Uranus conjuncting Mars. So again, Uranus is about surprise and unexpected events and things that are pertaining to mental trauma. And then Mars is conjuncting it. And Mars, again, it's a phallus. It rules sharp objects as well. And it's about war. So there's, again, it's interesting. It's probable that she, has a history of dealing with trauma with Mars energy. I do not think that, just one day a woman winds up being married to a John Wayne Bobbitt. That's just not reality. There's something that happened before that allowed her to connect with this horrible person. No offense, John Wayne, if you're watching, but you were a dick. Additionally, with that aspect, it's combined with this opposition to Chiron. So there's a woundedness when it has to do with Mars energy, with masculine energy, that Chiron. That's a tremendous woundedness, right? And also you got Saturn here at 20 degrees, which opposes her Venus, as well as her moon, if her moon is in Scorpio. So with that opposition with Saturn, it's a matter of her Venusian needs, the needs of abundance, of love, were thwarted because it was opposite Saturn in her chart. So one of the things that they speak about is that she wanted more money. She wanted him to work more, and he wasn't doing really well. She said, yep, that's what they say. That's what they say. It's interesting. There's like all these stories are about it now. I think for whatever reason she's come forward, and I think there's something on Lifetime I watched. And finally, what I wanted to look at here was their charts together, which I think is pretty awesome, actually. So this is a past life connection, in my experience, in my opinion. This is not the first time that they were together. I do think that they have a very, very, very strong connection. And I think that what's interesting is we noticed that John Wayne Bobbitt has a grand water trine in his chart, right? And Lorena is a Scorpio. So that also might make sense why they were together. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. I mean, that's pretty impressive to not only be able to find, I mean, it's just his willfulness. And again, I think that is that Saturn conjuncting the sun too, that mind over matter type thing. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Oh yeah, she had a lot of issues. And yes, good point. He was arrested for domestic a few years after the attempted castration, right? When will we learn? When will we learn our lessons? But yeah, let's look at their charts together. I think this is pretty interesting. Quilla, you made it. Welcome. Yeah, so look at this chart with the two of them together. So the first thing that is really interesting, right, is that let me just make sure. Yeah, so this chart is so fascinating. So if you want to look at past lives in a chart, you want to look at the nodes because that's your karma, right? And look what's going on here. His self node is at 7 degrees Scorpio. That's where he's coming from. And her sun is at 7 degrees Scorpio. So that's a very, very, very strong past life connection because the self node pertains to past lives anyway. And that is an exact connect. Meanwhile, that sun that she had at 7 degrees Scorpio is opposing his north node. So it's really far away in some respects from where he was supposed to be going. You know, when anybody's a personal planet hits your self node, you have to sort of be aware of like, okay, is this person helping me to get to where I want to go? Or are they pulling me back to where I came from? And again, with his self node in Scorpio, he's trying to move away from that. He's trying to move away from those carnal impulses that are sexual in nature. Meanwhile, his Neptune is at 24 degrees Scorpio. And her moon could be there. It's pretty close, most likely. But then Venus is there. And that is a really interesting aspect. Her Venus hitting his Neptune. So there was a certain idealization in their relationship. It's also interesting to note that the North Node, or where's her North Node? Okay, yeah. So her North Node is in Pisces. And South Node is in Virgo, and there's interesting quincunx going on with that, with his second 2-degree Saturn and 2-degree Sun. So in a lot of respects, there was sort of like a difficulty or a problem with her destiny being with him. Like it definitely was one of those things of trying to get a what is that expression? A circular peg in a square or something like that. Like there's definitely a little bit of tension going on there. Other stuff that's interesting in this chart. Yeah, a whole bunch of planets. All of her Scorpio planets look to be landing in his 6th house of enemies. There's also service there, so there's definitely a lot of conflict. But I would definitely say they have a past life connection. Especially if you look at over here, his Jupiter in Cancer was making some beautiful trines to her Neptune and her moon, most likely, and her Venus. So there was definitely a lot of love there. I mean, believe it or not, from what I gathered after the whole incident, I think that they got back together. Now that's love. Can you imagine? Really fascinating. Fascinating stuff. Thank you. Square peg, round hole. I appreciate that. I would say that's what the quincunx aspect is like. So anyway, we noticed a lot of interesting things with these charts, I hope. Yeah. And additionally, I hope you guys have a really great weekend. It's time for me to depart. But if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel, I would very much appreciate it. And also, if you're looking to find out what's going on in your chart and where that new moon in Aquarius hit this past Monday, or where other things are, what other things are happening in your chart, we can run your chart and find out what's up for your 2022. And we can also run your tarot cards. Just check out my website, psychicsun.com, and we'll hook you up with a reading. Oh, I'm glad it was interesting. It was fun for me too. All right, everybody, take really good care and have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you on Monday, live again. Bye-bye.